Hey, everybody, and welcome to Beyond the Veil. I have a very special guest today. His name is Dave Hoffman. He is the founder of CatastrophiCon. It is a convention that happens in Westchester County. It deals with horror and rock and roll, which is quite a unique combination. And it happens at Manhattanville University at the Reed Castle. And I'm really glad to have you here today, Dave. And thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Henry. And, great job pronouncing it correctly the first time. Catastrophicon's a little bit of a difficult word.
It's funny. We were talking about that before the show, and I've been practicing all week. I know that might sound pretty pathetic, but, it's one of those words that can be hard on in the mouth. But I think it's a great name, and it certainly fits the content of your conference. So this is now your second year of the convention. Would you be able to tell me a little bit about how you came up with CatastrophiCon, the concept, and why horror and rock and roll?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a long answer that's pretty interesting, actually. And I'm going to make reference to a few things. One of the big themes of this is obviously super fandom. So I want to point out the fact that you spent a week kind of dwelling on the title. That's what superfans do, so I like that. We got that in there. And the other thing I want to do, because we're talking about where did this idea come from, rock and roll horror convention, and it goes back many years. And I'm going to make reference to your last episode I saw on YouTube, because that is, again, superfans want shows. I like shows where you had to watch the last episode to know what's happening. And it may sound irrelevant, but last time you were talking about just workplace issues with, well, this is not the word you use, but the word I would use is boundaries when it comes to the workplace. How, if I'm interpreting it, as how I interpret the problem is a lot of employers don't recognize that you're a separate person and that, yes, I contracted to work for you. I'm going to work very hard, but that's it. I believe in hard work. I wouldn't be running my own business if I didn't. But I do think in America, we don't teach people how to say no to their boss, right? Because if you were in school and you demonstrated the ability to say no to your teacher when she asked you to do extra, that would be not doing your homework, right? And so you'd be bad. You're taught since you're a little kid that when your boss asks for more, you give them more. Yeah. And the person who gives more is better. And it's a little abstract for a kid, but it's so driven into our heart. Now, why am I bringing this up with regard to CatastrophiCon? Well, we met through the program Launch 1000, which was for entrepreneurs, for people who don't know. During COVID, the County of Westchester contracted with a startup incubator to help people find something else to do, and I was in live events. So we all have the entrepreneur spirit in our hearts. So why am I talking about the workplace? Well, many years ago, and just to try and, I was in an unsatisfactory work situation, let's just say. It was a treadmill that wasn't getting me anywhere. And at one point, without getting into too much detail, I wanted to change the calculus. I'm a conference producer. I produce business-to-business conferences. This is what I've been doing since 2006. And I was frustrated because I wasn't getting promoted. I was going from job to job, and just young people kept coming to me for advice. I kept being given responsible events to work on, so I knew what I was doing, but I just wasn't getting ahead, and I didn't like it. It was internal politics, and we were talking before this about getting distracted. I'm not going to go off on that rant because I have a lot of stories, but I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and I was saying, what's frustrating? There's no courses you could take on how to be a conference producer. There's not even a book. And then I started going off on what a book would entail, right? I have to read stuff about sales. I have to read stuff about how to be a better writer, right? Someone should put together a book that kind of gives the overview from all these different industries and then how to apply it to being a conference producer. And my friend says, why don't you write the book? And I was like, well, I don't really want to get stuck in this industry. And he said, yeah, I get it, but if you don't write it now, he said, you're sitting on an idea, so you should write it. So I did, and like 8 months later, 2016, I came out with the book, Producing Success, A Career Guide for Conference Producers, right? So that was great, changed the equation. I was happy, and then I started and I knew it meant my boss couldn't touch me anymore. It didn't matter if I got a promotion, because I wrote the book, the first and only book on the topic, and I liked the DIY ethos, right? The whole idea. And this is getting to the idea of CatastrophiCon, and I'll take a little detour,
Sure.
which is part of what CatastrophiCon is. What I really want to celebrate and create a platform for are creators, independent creators, fans who want to get closer to their franchises. We have fan film producers there. We have actors who've taken their ideas. Last year we had Ari Lehman, who was Jason in the original Friday the 13th, and he has a band called First Jason. So he was a professional musician, and he took this whole idea of being in a horror movie, and he came up with a heavy metal band called First Jason, right? Last year we had Beatrice Bopley, who was Freddy Krueger's mother, right? She wrote a book called The Krueger Curse, because when she was building that character, she had to create a backstory, because that's what actors do. And she did a little research on the movies, like what else did we know about Freddy Krueger, and she wrote a book about it. So this kind of initiative is really exciting to me, okay? And it goes way back to when I wrote my book. Now there's a second piece, which I'll get to in a second. So I wanted to find something else to promote, okay? I had this one book. I wasn't going to make millions on it. I did sell it on 6 continents, but there's, how many conference producers are there? We're talking about an audience of like 1,000 people on the planet or something. So I was a songwriter, and I thought, okay, let's record some music and put it out there. So that's what I did. I came up with this concept called Daddy Stingray. I came up with a little rock star persona. I recorded an album called The Sweet Talkin' Symphony. There's a song on there called I Don't Want to Go to Work, which has 1,500 hits on YouTube. So
it's a great one. I love it. Yeah, you sent it to me on LinkedIn. I checked it out. Yeah, it definitely aligns with a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about.
Right, and my claim to fame is 1,500 people on YouTube, and also on TikTok, there's 35 people who have like a 5-second clip singing along to it. I didn't put it on TikTok. I don't know where it came from, so, my little bit of fame. But anyway, that being said, now I had these 2 personas. I thought I was building something that was cumulative, but it wasn't. It was actually tearing me, ripping me in two for fans of certain movies. It tearing me apart, right? And it was a little bit frustrating because I didn't know what foot to put forward. If I put, on the one hand, this guy Dave Hoffman has a book called Producing Success. It's kind of like a corporate douche. P stands for pride, R stands for respect. And then which actually serves me well being a conference producer, because that's who talks at these things. And then Daddy Stingray is supposed to be a subversive and kind of silly, fun rock star. And I realized these guys hate each other, right? And they all live in here. So for a couple months, this was a little bit of a conflict. And then one day, I was looking at a map. I don't know why, but suddenly I looked at a map. It said Hudson Valley, and a word popped into my head, Hudson Valley Music Summit. And it just, boom. I was like, wow. So I started emailing and reaching out to people I knew in the music industry. And eventually, I came up with my first conference that was my own, that I had did from soup to nuts. I no longer had to wonder about why I wasn't getting promoted, because now I was the leader of my own event. We had about 300 people in Kingston, New York. I pulled it off. It was on August 9th, 2019. And it was a few days before the 50th anniversary of Woodstock. It was 20 miles from the city, 20 minutes from the city of Woodstock. And so it was very meaningful, very exciting. That was the first seed of what turned into CatastrophiCon, because I had one of my vendors was actually a comic book artist who she bought a table because she wanted to see if she could get into band merch. And she did actually get hired by somebody who handles merch for a bunch of bands, right? And so to backtrack, the reason I was saying the second piece of CatastrophiCon, so the first piece is the indie ethos, right? You know, there's no boundaries. There's nothing that stands in your way if you want to write. If I want to write that book, I self-published it. I got it out there. The second piece is what I call creative collisions, okay? It's where two different, like I was saying with the 2 stars, 2 different ideas coming together and creating something new. So Producing Success, Daddy Stingray, Hudson Valley Music Summit. And suddenly I felt congruent, because produced by Dave Hoffman, hosted by Daddy Stingray, bam, and then it was a real thing. And so in the back of my mind, I knew that this vending thing sort of was related, and I was looking for new touch points for this audience, for musicians. And I started thinking, well, people in the music industry, it was a business-to-business event, but they're all music fans, and like maybe they're collectors. I'm just like sort of tossing around the idea that maybe they want to collect comic books. Something's telling me that there's a thing there. There's always comic book shows and there's always record shows, but I've never seen them together, right? and I didn't know why, but so at this point it's in the back of my mind. 2020 I ran the Music Video Film Festival, and this was a new kind of event. It was meant to be a touch point for the music industry. One of our guests was Mark Goodman, who was the very first VJ when MTV went on the air. He was one of our judges. And it was a great event, and it was outside of my comfort zone. I'd never even been to a film festival, and somehow we had people fly in from Houston, from Toronto, and so there was momentum happening. And then in 2020, I was going to run, in June of 2020, I was going to run a investment conference, which is sort of my bread and butter in St. Louis. And, the joke I tell people, having my value proposition in June of 2020 be I'm going to get you face-to-face with people to shake hands. Believe it or not, that wasn't a good, what they call product market fit, right? So I had to shut things down, and then that was where we discovered Launch 1000.
Yes.
And we went through that together, and I eventually wanted to explore this idea of comic book show with a record show. So I started asking about it. Part of starting a business is, because initiative is like the real initiative and vision. It's not just mine. It's not about me. It's more about I want other people's vision, because I know how much I love this journey I've explained so far, like miserable corporate drone to having my own book, my own identity, and 3 events, right? Or 2 events at that point. And we're doing this research, and I'm asking people, collectors, like, what makes you go to these shows? And I found out about the whole autograph collecting world, which I didn't really know about. And I have a friend who flew to Europe to meet Sylvester Stallone. And that's how much it is these stars mean to these people, right? And I started exploring that. I started going to shows. I actually went to camp at the place where Friday the 13th was filmed, right? It's called Camp Nobi Bosco. And I thought it was just a, like a urban legend. But then my friend, who's a huge fan, he sends me an email because, is this where you went to camp? And I'm like, yeah, it is. So I went with him on a tour of the camp, and we were joking that I was like the only one there who was like, everyone else is a Friday the 13th fan. I was a Camp Nobi Bosco fan, right? And I scooped up some water I had a whiskey nip in my pocket. I dumped it out. I scooped up some water from there. And eventually when I met Ari Lehman, I got him to sign it. So I have water from Camp Crystal Lake with Jason's
That's pretty awesome.
signature on it,
That's
right?
pretty cool.
And it is pretty. It wasn't even a favorite movie. I mean, I like the movie, but now it's a favorite because now it's like in my blood. And I felt like I was standing in Mount Sinai because I went there in like '81, and like that was before it was a huge phenomenon, right? I don't even know if Jason was a thing. He wasn't the killer at that point. He wasn't the icon he was.
Yeah, it was his mother.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I started getting the idea. I started seeing the fandom. I started seeing how much people. So I had my experience, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of depth to a lot of these movies. And so my friend Ralph got me this book called Camp Crystal Lake Memories, and it's just the history of Friday the 13th. And I noticed, I went to my next con, and I saw a bunch of people had this book, and they had autographs from everybody. Like, there were people who flew in from across the country because they wanted to get an autograph from the first girl who was killed. It was her first con, right?
That's
but
amazing.
It was that important for them to have the autographs. And
So almost anybody who's attached to the film. Sometimes when you look at conferences too, you'll see that there's guests, and you say, all right, well, they did maybe 1 or 2 movies. That might be the only movie that they did, but because it's such a rabid fan base that somebody is willing to travel just to speak with someone who might have been on the set for 1 day.
Yeah.
I find that amazing, but you also, talking from a business standpoint, you're getting your rabid fans. You're getting the people that really ultimately make a venture like yours a true success.
Yeah, and what was really interesting about it was not just, I'm trying to connect the fans with what they want, but I'm also observing this book, right? It's that they're completists. It's that it's an act of love to have a collection, right? These are people, their collection needs to be complete, right? That was what was really compelling to me. So eventually I started saying, okay, well, I want to start touching base, touch pointing with my music world again, and maybe it's not about collecting, because I was getting a kick out of talking to some of these stars. Sometimes there's a line you can't get near them, but sometimes you get right up to them. You know, I was at a con and Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall was there.
Oh, great show.
And I told him this is a fact. He did the voice on It's a Bug's Life. I think it's called Bug's Life. Sorry.
It was on a couple of months ago when I saw it. Yeah, he was in it.
I got to tell him he had no line. I feel like he's a huge star, should have had a line. And I said, listen, you know, when you have kids, you have to sit through a lot of terrible movies, right? And A Bug's Life was the first movie that I actually enjoyed watching with my kids, like, not because of them, but because, wow, it's a good movie. So I told him that. He laughed. He said, you know, we have one too. But I also spoke to, man, I'm forgetting the name. Yeah, I spoke to some other stars there, but I really got a kick out of, like, you know, they're real people. They are kind of looking at fans too with curiosity, the way I was. And so that's what led to me building this idea. And then one day I was looking for a venue, because there's a financial equation there to make it work. And I called up the county. The counties, you know, when you talk to the right people, there's a lot of supportive people around here when you're trying to start something like this.
In Westchester County.
Yeah,
yes.
Around here. And someone recommended the universities, and so I went to Manhattanville not knowing what I was going to find, and I walked into Reed Castle, and it just knocked me on my ass. Anyone who's watching this, just even Google Reed Castle. It's a castle, okay? It's from the 1800s, okay? And at that moment, I'm like, I'm doing a horror convention, and I thought it through, you know, like, rock and roll horror convention. And that was before I had the word CatastrophiCon, but now CatastrophiCon rock and roll horror convention. I didn't even know exactly what it was going to be, but I knew that was what it was going to be called. And this castle was so it's used in movies, so it's got that fandom angle to it. The Thomas Crown Affair was filmed there. The Boardwalk Empire was filmed there.
Oh, wow.
Gilded Age was filmed there. There's a scene from Time Traveler's Wife TV show where the staircase is there, and I did see that. So it's got that, you know, filmmakers have honed in on it. But also it has secret rooms. There's doors that there's an actual bookshelf that you open it and there's a room on the other side. There's other doors where you just can see the outline and you don't know what's on the other side. And I remember having a conversation. So it has a cathedral, and that's where we had our concert. Last year we had Ari's band, First Jason, and the Thomas G. Waits project, which is Thomas G. Waits was in The Warriors.
And The Thing.
Yep.
John Carpenter's The Thing. Great film.
Yeah. He was the radio guy in The Thing, and he's a great guy. His band is great. And so we had their music in the cathedral. And I remember asking, you know, is it blasphemous? I'm trying to...
You want to be respectful.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm trying to push the line and be subversive, but I'm not trying to upset anyone.
Exactly.
And they said no, because it's non-denominational is what they said. And They said it used to be Catholic, and then when they changed it, they had to dig up the nuns who were buried in the catacombs beneath the castle and bury them out back. What?
Yeah, this place sounds like a treasure trove now. And also, you know, I'm a Manhattanville graduate. I went there for my master's, and Reed Castle, I was always fascinated by it. But what makes it perfect, especially for CatastrophiCon, is that I believe, and you might be able to better tell us, there were talks about it being haunted.
Every rule says it's everyone you talk to. If you Google their stories, students will tell you it's haunted, and they have specific stories. I was talking to a security guard I know, and he used to work there, and he said, "Yep, it's haunted. He's been there overnight." Who am I to argue it? Yeah. It's probably haunted. Must be. I don't know. Did you ever go into the basement?
No, I mean, I actually, when I was there as a student, I did a short film. It was for a Shakespeare class, and it was the scene with Hamlet's father being murdered. Oh. So it was cool because it has that aesthetic that it looks like a Gothic type of place where you really can feel a certain vibe. Never been in the basement. Have you been in the basement?
Well, okay, so if you ever come to my event, you follow the rules. That's what I'm telling everyone. And if you want to listen to what's on the other side of my mouth, I'm saying one day I went there and I went down into the basement at dusk too. I went downstairs because I was curious. I just was exploring went downstairs, then I went downstairs again in the basement. Now, we talk about whether it's haunted. I use the term haunted house to describe any building that is not aligned symmetrically, because today we everything is got this like meticulous architecture, but the older a building is, or sometimes you'll have a vacation home where they like chopped it up to make more rooms. That is what I call a haunted house. The basement is definitely like that. It's not. There's no logic behind how it's set up. And I go down one floor, and it looks a little like the white hallways in The Thing. Actually, there's this. You step on like the metal plates, and it makes noise and stuff. But we walk down. I'm with my son. We're just looking around. We're not sure if we're even allowed to be there. I go around a corner, and there is a door, and it's like this high and this wide. Right? It's like. For very, you would assume it's for storage or something, but I look in and there's a stove. A stove on the other side of this little tiny door. That's it. That's the end of the story. But what?
It's like a stove. Now I'm guessing it was like an old-fashioned type stove, or was it just?
I didn't get close enough. But no, like it's not modern like today, but like a stove you cook on, maybe from the 60s or something. But what's with this door? Like, that's not a person's place. Someone lives there because it's a stove. I mean,
that's like the beginning of a horror film. It's just completely out of place. It's like, is this a stove that a monster uses? Like, what's going on here? So
yeah, exactly.
It seems like there's a lot of twists and turns. And with Reed Castle, there's certain things that just don't seem to make sense, and that certainly sounds like one of them.
That was beautiful because I don't necessarily want to find a logical explanation for it. I'm good with I encountered a monster's little. I mean, it could have been a good monster. Maybe he was the little old man who's little dwarf leading me on my way. I don't know, but I did get the feeling that maybe I didn't want to look around too much more because who knows what what secret doors I was going to find or what new dimensions.
So it sounds like with this conference, CatastrophiCon, you have a unique type of concept. And you married your passion, which is creating this convention experience. It sounds like you're also empowering others with their stories of entrepreneurship. So it seems like you've taken all your experiences and married it into one event. If I'm a first-time convention goer to CatastrophiCon, what can I expect in the experience?
Well, that's a great question, and it is actually my challenge in marketing it because these events exist and people have their expectations, but I want to give people something you don't expect. I mean, that's what I want to give you. And a friend of mine was there, and he gave me a high compliment without even realizing it. Because I asked my friends, who don't go to these things, I'm like, what did you think? And one guy said, what I loved was you talk to one person and they're selling like some kind of trinket. Then you talk to an author and he's like an artist, a guy, a very cerebral type person with interesting world building. And then you talk to an actor and there's always something different happening. He said, you never know what you're going to find next. I'm like, that's exactly what I want to bring people. We had Dungeons and Dragons last year for people who want to play games. And that's what I want. So the idea is creative collisions. My goal is for there to be a filmmaker there who's meeting their favorite star, and them to meet some musician who's there to meet their favorite star, and then 5 years from now I find out the musician scored the movie. I mean, that's what I want to see happen. I run these investment conferences. I've really just relaunched for the first time launched my own business, and what I tell people when I introduce them, I say, look, you're all here for business reasons, right? You're looking for new investments. You're looking for people to invest in your funds or whatever. And that's what I'm promising you. That's what's going to happen tonight. But there's another thing I want you to keep in mind. When two people have a conversation in the spirit of curiosity and enthusiasm, the gods of inspiration get jealous, and they try and insert themselves into that conversation. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, you're going to be able to become better investors from doing this, but there's something else that is floating around out there. If you do this enough, there's going to be an idea that never crossed your mind, and it's going to change your life. And every time you have a dinner like this, it's with those kinds of people. So remember, this is what we're going for. That is what I'm going for with the CatastrophiCon too. I want to find the creativity, not just because I was emphasizing the book with the autographs because it's a work of art by itself. It's a thing that they're building. It's
snapshot in time for them.
And they have stories, right? They could tell you where they got these autographs. This is a work of art of itself. I have my little outfit that I wear. I don't normally dress like this, but this is my.
It's a great look, Dave. I love it.
Thank you. It's my MC look. My ringmaster look. And there were a lot of cosplayers there last year, and I still am tagged on their on their Instagrams because it's a chance. I mean, I never thought much about cosplay or about collecting, but I realized these are all art forms. These are expressions of creativity, right? This is so dressing up and going to a place which has a vibe is expressing your individuality in a way that work doesn't support. That's why I'm big on boundaries when it comes to work. Like, it's good to work hard, but you should be allowed to do this in your life, and that's why I'm blessed to be able to do both. I have my investment series and I have this, and I want to bring them together. My goal is to bring them together one day. Investors like fun stuff too, so.
Well, that's true, and I think what I'm hearing too is that this is also not only an inspiring event, but also one where people can network. You don't know what's going to happen. So
exactly.
I like when you bring people together, and you might find an unlikely match that inspires you to do something on your own that becomes your life's passion. And really what happens is CatastrophiCon is your life's passion, and you're empowering others to follow their life's passion. So not only is this just horror and rock and roll, but this is an event that is meaningful on many levels. So I'd like to ask you just I see we have a couple of more minutes. These are personal questions.
Sure.
What's your favorite horror film? I like to end off with a couple of questions just to get a sense of you as the fan. So tell me, what's your favorite horror film?
Man, that is a tough question. I've been thinking about that, and it goes, it depends what I'm in the mood for. I wanted to give a good answer that kind of fit with the whole, vibe. So I love the movie Jacob's Ladder, and I love it because, the catacombs underneath Reed Castle, it's sort of a maze through reality, that movie. So I'm gonna call that one, even though there's a lot. Hellraiser 2 also has a maze in it. If a movie has a maze of some or reality shift, that's always a good plus for me.
Oh yeah, and even Labyrinth, even though that's not a horror film, definitely
it's the right vibe, and Bowie's in there. So
a little tidbit: my uncle, who's an actor, he was in Jacob's Ladder. He was an extra in the scene where they're in the hospital. He was in a straitjacket. So
does he want to sell autographs?
Yeah, hey, Uncle Ray, if you want to, I got a place for you to do that. So tell me, what's your favorite band?
That's another great question, because in the age of Spotify, where I have like several 10,000 song lists, it's hard to focus on one. And I should mention, this year we have some great bands, just because we're supposed to be plugging. We have a band called Spiked Polite and Sewage New York City, featuring Michelle Shocked, and they're a punk band. I think Spike entered the original punk rock scene sort of like late in the day, so he occupies a unique niche. Michelle Shocked was a folk singer in the 80s. She's very impassioned about social issues, and she's very talented because she's playing bass for a punk band right now. And she was a acoustic folk artist in the 1980s, so that's a great combination. And there's another band called Mainline. They're local. They're a heavy metal band. I met them at Lucy's. The managers at Lucy's are very supportive of our event too. This is in Pleasantville. I'm talking to them while they're auditioning for some Battle of the Bands, and they casually mention, right? They just say, we were here and we were playing through the album Ride the Lightning, and then there was more time, so we played the album Kill It 'Em All. And I'm just like, wait, you played Ride the Lightning? I'm talking to a band at a bar, and they played the whole album Ride the Lightning? And I go home, I listen to them, and it's one of those situations where the guy who was the singer was, I don't know if I call him soft-spoken, but I was a little stunned at his pipes. It was amazing. So we're very happy to have them. So if I really want to answer the question, those are my two favorite bands. Go see them. But to answer the question and back to the creative collisions idea, I'm going to go with an old favorite, but I'm going to give you a twist on it, which is Led Zeppelin. I've loved them since I was a kid. Everyone loves Led Zeppelin. Maybe that's not even an interesting answer, but here's where it gets interesting. I listened to them, I overplayed them as a kid and sort of left them behind for several years. Over the years, I started listening to blues, classic blues, like, the John Lee Hooker's type stuff. And so I became very familiar with the songs that they had redone. And so recently, it was this year actually, I put Led Zeppelin 2 in my CD player again. I listen to CDs still. And I'm not just hearing these classic songs, I'm hearing the original song too. And I'm like stunned, thinking this is You Need Love by Willie Dixon. How did they take it in this direction when they play Whole Lotta Love? Or the Lemon song is based on Killin' Floor by Howlin' Wolf, and it's got those bass breakdowns and everything. And then Bring It On Home is just, it all sounds like the first part of that song by Led Zeppelin. That's the song. And you're like, they took the 60s sensibility of electric guitar and solos and creativity, and they mixed it together, again, creative collision, with classic blues songs that I could only imagine what it was like in that year when you knew those songs and suddenly you hear this new take on it. So
it was like sampling now when you hear songs and a sample, but done in a more, I'd say, more creative way. Yes.
Yeah, mind-blowing. And then, of course, the other obvious answer would be Ozzy as probably my favorite. He's been there the whole time throughout this whole heavy metal movement. It might be a trite answer, but he's really done everything, and he's spawned some great, Zakk Wylde is one of my favorites. Those are the answers, kind of some of the favorites.
And the last question, what was your major takeaway after doing the first CatastrophiCon that might be useful for others who are looking to be an entrepreneur or do something else? What would be the major takeaway?
Wow, that's a good question. I didn't sleep, literally, actually, for 4 days. I did not sleep the night before it, and then 3 days afterwards, I had adrenaline, and I didn't sleep. It's a tough answer. I'm still working through it because it took on a life of its own. So, which is great. I mean, that's the best part of producing an event is creating something that, I guess I was the impetus behind it because I put it together, but it really was its own thing, and I was following it, and I was along for the ride. So, I mean, my advice is keep an eye on the I don't want to be dry about it, but keep an eye on the essentials. How much is it going to cost? How much, figure out how you can make profit, not because the money is important for itself, but the thing for next year is I'm doing everything I can to have help. And I had help last year. I had a lot of volunteers, which is wonderful. They were great. My family got to help, which is, if part of the lesson is enjoy the ride, I suddenly had my son Jackson, my daughter Lily, my wife Alicia, they all helped, and everyone told me that they stepped up to the occasion and took a leadership role and a host role. And that was meaningful to me that I was able to build something like that for my family. But it did get out of control. And now that I'm running this investment stuff, I have a little money to really try and get professional help. So that's actually my answer. Get professional help. Okay. I'm going to let you
on
take
many
that
levels.
Yes.
And Dave, I'd like to thank you so much. Everyone, the next CatastrophiCon event is September 28th. That's on a Saturday, and that's at Manhattanville, which actually now is a university. It was a college. Manhattanville University, Reed Castle, and that's in Purchase, New York. We will have more links and details in the description down below. Guys, please like and subscribe if you like this content. Again, Dave Hoffman, thank you so much.
Thanks. And if you see me or Henry there, say hello. Tell them
say
you
hello
watch
to
this.
us.
Yeah.
We love to speak with the fans and our friends. We love to. So thanks a lot, Dave. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.